Mike McDonough. I'm the RVP of sales here at Chorus for our mid-market sales team. I have a, I guess, non-traditional tech background. So 7 years ago, I broke into tech. But before then, I spent the better part of a decade as a first responder, firefighter, paramedic. And have had a fun run here the last 7 years. And I'm actually pretty flattered to be here and have the chance to share my learnings with the rest of the team. And I know there's a lot of folks that know me that are joining, so I appreciate you all showing up and supporting me today. Liana, go ahead.
Perfect. So hi, everybody. My name is Liana Meringolo. I'm a strategic account executive here, so I'll be working with Mike under the mid-market segment here at Chorus. Before Chorus, worked at a few Boston-based organizations, both in MarTech space as well as the security space, focusing on net new customers as well as working with existing customers. Excited to be here. This is week 3 for me here at Chorus, so still getting ramped up, but excited to obviously chat with the team today and focus on team success.
Awesome. Well, it's great to have both of you here. Mike, I think you kind of mentioned you want to talk about 5 specific kind of bullet points or 5 ways that sales leaders can encourage and help their team succeed. Let me pull that up real quick. So we kind of call these Mike's Mighty 5, which also could be like a fast food combo meal or something, I feel like, but I like it. I think it's catchy. Do you want to run through kind of these 5 before we start talking about them individually?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm going to get a little bit raw and vulnerable today. I think it's important as a leader to do those things. So that's kind of a theme for me in general. So number 1, prioritizing mental health. We'll cover some stats and data around that, but also more tactical ways that we can encourage our teams to focus on their own mental health, letting them know it's okay to not be okay certain times. And on that front, I just want to give a shout out to 2 people that have helped me on this front. So one is Dewan Brown, who used to be a colleague of mine, really mission-driven person. Check him out, check out his content, check out a lot of the different work he's doing. He's given me the courage to do a lot of this stuff and be vulnerable. So thank you, Dewan. And then to another person, Kevin Fleich. He's a veteran, a Green Beret. His story is amazing. And not just his story from his time in the military, but his recovery time and his ability to tackle things like mental health has encouraged me a lot. So I'd be foolish if I were to tell you I came up with that part on my own. So thank you to both of you. The second piece is just rejecting micromanagement. As sales leaders, especially in this environment with teams all over the place, we want to do those things, but I'd like to talk about why it's actually going to go against what you're actually trying to achieve, even if it's really well intended. And then nurturing a coaching culture is just incredibly important. It's something I'm very passionate about. I know it's something Liana's passionate about. Top reps want to have coaching. And then embracing automation, right? Sellers have been asked to do more than ever. So we want to make sure that wherever we can automate, we do that so they're spending more time selling. And then a fun one to talk about, it's going to be kind of bi-directional. Liana and I could talk about it, but the importance of me creating an environment for folks to be able to manage up with me, because I'm certainly not perfect, right? And also my ability to manage up within the organization to alleviate some of that stress and create kind of ties back to point number 1, right? Prioritizing mental health. I believe managing up and all of those things are part of creating an environment to do so. So I'm excited. Before this, just give everyone an idea. I spent 7 months before this in between jobs during the pandemic, raising my 2 children while my wife was working in a COVID unit. So for me, this is really exciting. I'm kind of shaking off the rust a little bit and jumping back into the game, and I've wound up in a perfect place to do that. Yeah, that's
awesome.
It. We can hop right into it.
Cool. To start this first bullet point, the prioritizing mental health, we found this stat that is just pretty crazy when you think about it. 42% of employed workers say their stress levels are currently at high or very high. Kick off the conversation around this one with that stat.
Yeah, for sure. And the first thing is, right, there's a lot of folks here that are end of month, and whether you're a sales leader or an individual contributor right now, it's end of month or end of quarter. I think mental health is a really good thing to be talking about, right? So go out, close your deals, be successful. That's always a top priority for us as sellers. But I always like to let people know that, your number, your quota doesn't define your value and who you are as a person. That's something I struggled with personally as well. So go out, get it, close your deals. I appreciate you taking this time this close to the end of the quarter just to spend some time with me. And I hope I bring you some value. So for me, mental health it's a new journey. I talk about people that have inspired me a ton to focus on that. To give you a background, I told you I was a firefighter before. So for me, I can't avoid my mental health challenges, right? I've actually embraced them, and in some ways I've turned them into superpowers. So I do have PTSD from some things that have happened in the fire service. I have kind of treated that with alcohol. So I'm an alcoholic that's in recovery. And as a result of really confronting and facing my own challenges, my own anxieties, it's been life-changing, right? So for me, creating an environment where I can be vulnerable, where I can talk about how I'm not perfect and that I might be having a bad day, has always been important to me. Now, during coming out of this pandemic, everyone being in different places mentally, I think it's really important that we continue to focus on that. And I don't think I need to get into the broader picture, right, around where we are as a country from a mental health perspective. It's a top priority, in my opinion, a pandemic. So let's focus on the people we're spending our time with and making sure they're doing good between the years. So simple things that I've done. One, it really just starts with caring about your people that you're managing. I don't know how to lead a team that I don't care about. It just doesn't add up to me. So investing in your people and getting to know them, what they care about, what their goals are, maybe some things that stress them out. Liana's here for one of the reasons that she's here is pushing her out of her comfort zone, just like I'm pushing myself out of mine, right? She's been here 3 weeks. So creating an environment where we're open to being vulnerable as a group, and then pushing through that together is really important, and it's important for your mental health. So some of the things that I do, is making sure that my one-on-ones aren't just pipeline, thank you, move on to the next one. I'm not saying that stuff's not important. You shouldn't be super tight on revenue, like that matters a ton, but you need to find time to spend with your people just to say, how's your headspace? You can pick up once you get to know people when they're not doing well, when they're having a tough day, a tough week, a tough month. The sales game is hard. There is no off season. We keep going. You have a great quarter, cool, do it again, right? That rigor, that stress for all of us is real. And certain things can happen, right? Like burnout, anxiety, stress. You won't get top performance from your sellers if they're not good between the ears, plain and simple. That'll come out in the conversations they have. They'll be pushing on clients to close deals that probably aren't even there yet because they're stressing out about it. So just taking the time to genuinely care about your team, understanding where they are, right? And there's a delicate balance there because you don't want to pry. You don't want to start asking people about maybe health issues. So for me, it's critical that I am constantly open about it, not only for my own mental health, but so that somebody like Liana, who's just joining my team, knows that like there's anxiety with joining a new team, wanting to get your first deals in. All this stuff adds up for us as sellers, and we can get in our own heads. So for me, creating that sort of environment for my team is really critical, right? And now you think about it, right? This is a Mike McDonough-ism, if you will, and as an alcoholic. But there's things I want people to start thinking about when it comes to putting their teams in a good position, right? So like we all are in sales, we all love drinking. You all don't necessarily have the problems I have. That's okay. But do other things with your teams to get to know them. That's not just going to the bar and ripping shots and talking about deals and doing all that stuff. That has its place. You want to go celebrate. I go to that bar. I'm just drinking seltzer waters. That's okay, right? But we want to create an environment for people. Not everyone wants to go to the bar and drink, right? Like that's just not what we want to be doing. So coming up with creative ideas and I've been blessed where a lot of my teammates in the past know that I have some of these challenges and try to find things to do with me and come up with ideas that's just not revolved around that. And if you look at it, there's nobody that's not probably having a couple more drinks during this pandemic, right? There's tons of data and stats out there. Anybody that ever wants to talk to me about it, whether we've met before or not, hit me up on LinkedIn. It's really important to me. Something I focus a lot on. And it's okay, right? As Dewan says, it's okay not to be okay, right? But you've got to have those moments to understand that. And what I've found for me, bring it back to the professional level and how to build and scale a successful sales team, that's priority number one for me for a reason. Because if everybody's in a good headspace, they can come in and jam. They do their job. They work really hard. They know you care about them, right? They will run through a wall for you because you have their back and you're pushing them in a positive direction. And hopefully outside of the work stuff, you're having a really positive impact on their lives. And that's why I think we're in management, right? That's why sales leaders, that's why I'm in sales as sales leader. Otherwise, I'd be out chasing deals myself, right? So caring about our team and putting them in a position to be successful, right? So I can carry on about this topic all day, every day. But I'll take a pause. Liana, know if you have any additional thoughts, questions you want to throw at me there. And if there's anybody even in.
No, I was just going to mention, I think you're absolutely spot on, especially given the pandemic, everything going on. A lot of people have things, outside of work on the daily basis that they're working through, and we just don't know half the time. But yesterday I was actually poking around LinkedIn, and I saw an article, and it was called "Burnout is Not the Badge of Honor." And it just made me realize, like, we're all just working our asses off on a daily basis, and it's just, it isn't the badge of honor. A lot of again, we're doing a lot of things outside of work, so it's so vital to just always check in, acknowledge what's going on, ask each other how we're doing, and allow mental illness to be, a more normal topic to talk about.
Hell yeah, Leon, I love that. That's fantastic. Again, I could keep going. I think there's one other thing though, like my big message to just recap before we move on to the next one. If you're a seller and you're hearing this, whether live or recording, I want to just reiterate, like if you're stressed out, if you're burnt out, go for a walk, take a breath, let your manager know, right? Hopefully they know those things, but if they don't, like, it's okay, right? This is a tough game. There's not a lot of people don't do sales because of these reasons. So just know you're not alone. It's that simple for me. Like, when it comes to mental health, I've been there where I've felt alone, and it's people that have inspired me to talk about these things in a professional environment that have made all the difference in the world. And I'm just trying to pay it forward to those folks that might feel alone, that might be struggling with these things. And you're not alone. There's a lot of us.
I love that. That's such a great message. We had a question comment come in. If you don't mind, I'll read that real quick. It looks like it's from Anthony. He just says, "This is great so far, Mike. Thank you. What sorts of things other than ripping shots have you done with the team in this new digital world?"
Well, in fairness, right? I did spend a significant amount of time out of the game. For me, that my mental health, it was the greatest thing in the world. I have 2 little girls, and I spend time with them. Now on the team front, it's simple things, whether it's just going to lunch or dinners, maybe somebody has a glass of wine or whatever it may be. Liana and I were just talking about this recently. Like we're finally back. So we're in our Boston office. I got a lot of energy. I feed off my teammates' energy. But we're talking about anything from, Liana mentioned axe throwing. I've never thrown axes, but it sounds pretty cool to me, right? Some people do the escape houses, right? I'm hoping at some point I'd love to take our team to go for like a hike together in the warm weather here in the wintertime, whether that's we hit a certain goal and we take a Friday off and do something outdoors together. But just other things, right? Than just bonding over getting enough drinks in us to be able to be comfortable enough to talk to each other. We should be able to have those conversations without altering our minds, right? If you want to do that, go ahead. But for me, I think that's how you really build strong teams and relationships that are based around trust and being vulnerable without having to get some liquid courage.
That's awesome. One other question, if you don't mind. I know we got to run through the rest of these, but I think this is a great question from Stephanie. I want to make sure we get to it. Stephanie says, creating space where people can be vulnerable in itself isn't easy. To me, the first step is to be transparent and vulnerable myself, which sets an example for others. And Stephanie just asked, do you have any other ideas of how you've enabled your team to open up and feel safe about being vulnerable with you as a leader or teammates?
Yeah. And I'd maybe even after I answer this, Liana might be a good person to answer this as well, right? Because even when I'm trying, I'm not hitting the nail on the head. And there's some folks that just don't have mental health problems. That's okay, right? Like we all have our anxieties and stresses, and then there's some of us that just go a little bit deeper, right? So for me, being open and honest about those things, I have to be for myself, right? And I also don't want anyone to come into work and have their work self and their outside of work self, right? Like we're human beings, we want to be one person, right? So it's constant dialogue. I don't just sit around, trying to be looking for therapy or everyone to be therapists. Like I have my own therapist, but to your point, like you pretty much summed it up, Stephanie. Creating that space starts with me as far as I'm concerned, because if I'm willing to show that I'm not perfect, that I have my challenges, that translates into business too, because then people are open to ask me questions about things that they feel like they should know, but it's okay if you don't know it, right? I hope that answers your question. I don't know if Liana, you had anything else you wanted to touch upon there before we moved on to the next one.
No, I was going to say, I think just having, if your mentor, your leader is as open and honest as you are, Mike, then it's just so much easier for me to come in and share what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, what I want to work on, and just having those mental checks again. So I think the dialogue is back and forth, but communication is key.
Yeah, I mean, you sort of set an example of that at the beginning of this webinar. You teed up a couple of things that some other people might not feel comfortable sharing, but immediately there's a shift, right? And I feel like everyone here, you hear someone open up like that, and you're like, okay, I need to pay attention to this, and it kind of brings people closer, which is positive most of the time, right? So, all right, let me pull up the next stat to kick off Mike's Mighty 5 point number 2. Then this one is all about rejecting micromanagement. So this stat, evidence shows that approximately 79% of employees have been micromanaged at some point, but a 2011 study found that people who believe they're being watched perform at a lower level.
All day, right? And I'm gonna love some of Liana's thoughts on this as well. We've all been micromanaged, period, for the most part, right? Probably there's a few exceptions where somebody found a manager that doesn't, they've stuck with them for 30 years or something. And I think that stat is so relevant from the perspective of, I think there's a bunch of really well-intentioned managers, especially in sales, because that's what I'm familiar with, that during this pandemic that hopefully we're all coming out of now, felt this need, and especially early on to micromanage, whether that's like multiple daily stand-ups to have conversations or too many one-on-ones, lots of internal meetings, like getting on top of their sellers to the point where they feel like they couldn't do their jobs. Their intention is to be there, to be present, to help them out for a lot of folks. But the challenge becomes now people who are especially really inherently good sellers that, have a direction, know what they're doing, need to be managed differently, right? I don't think anyone really needs to be micromanaged. But when you start doing that, you're actually slowing down your sales reps, as far as my opinion goes, right? Like if you're spending so much time just talking through too much and the same things over and over again to feel like you have control, and we kind of want that as sales managers. I've been guilty of this before too, especially when I became my first frontline sales manager coming as an individual contributor. I wanted everyone to sell like I did. That was micromanaging from a certain perspective, because what I need them to do is become the best version of themselves as sellers, right? And in order to do that, it really does go back to, in a way, mental health, understanding these people, the people on your team and caring about them. So the things that I will kind of touch upon here is really the impact of potentially doing that. So what I've seen just doesn't work is now managers are trying to show like an uptick in what I've, not just myself, I've probably heard this or stole this from somewhere, but like things like vanity metrics, right? You want your sellers to be constantly working, getting as many touches out there, closing as many deals. So do I, right? I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is that if some of the things that sellers can do, especially in larger deals, is spend a lot of time thinking, strategizing, planning, putting together content, right? That stuff's not going to be measured in CRM or any other tool for that matter, but it's critical, right? And what a lot of managers can do is focus on those vanity metrics. Get your activities up, get X amount of calls, X amount, and I understand the need for some of that stuff because we do have to measure it. However, combine that with lots of micromanagement, what happens is your sellers will just pick, okay, you want me to get 100 emails out? Cool. I'll set up a cadence of one of my sales engagements tools. I don't really care what they look like. There you go. They're your 100 emails for the day, right? That happens. I don't care what anybody says, right? And those sorts of things really wind up inhibiting your sellers to go out and build their own skill sets as well. Maybe fall flat on their faces a couple of times, because that's how you learn sometimes, is making mistakes. So you hired people for a reason. Trust them to do that job, empower them to do that job. And then, not to jump onto Mike's mighty 5 number, I guess, bullet point number 3, but that's where coaching and certain things come along with that as well. I do want to be very clear that management and solid coaching are two different things, which I'll get into here in a little bit, right? And that also falls back. Well, let me actually take a step back there. So, our jobs as managers is really to manage the team in the pipeline. If we're constantly focused on this month's deals, what our activity history is today, micromanaging those folks, we're missing the opportunity to plan ahead, to strategize, do what all great sales leaders do, that I've witnessed, that I admire, that I had the distinct pleasure of having mentors like this, the ability to see around corners. Like if you're so caught up in the moment in what your sellers are doing this second and focused on that, it's harder to get macro, right? So for me, micromanagement has a lot of negative impacts from that perspective. And as I mentioned, right, you're going to have the opposite impact of what you're trying to do. So just keep those things in mind. I think it's hopefully helpful. There's some folks here that maybe are feeling like, oh God, maybe I micromanage. That's okay. I've done it too, right? Like these are things I've learned by my own mistakes, right? And then the other thing that can happen, nobody wants to admit to this. I know my team probably, I'm building and scaling a team right now. So I've been here 60 days, hopefully haven't gotten to the point where they're spending a lot of time complaining about me yet, right? Because everything's new. But as time progresses, if you're just so on top of their sellers and they feel like they're being restricted a bit, they're also now going to send out that 100 emails, whatever it is to hit those vanity metrics, and they're going to hop on the phones and start complaining about you. People don't want to hear that, but in my opinion, it's true. And now it's this negative atmosphere instead of, hey, we're all pointing in the same direction. We're one team. I trust you. I want to empower you. Let's go get it, right? That's just a different message. And I think sellers need that because they're building their careers too. They want to be in a position like I am one day. They're not looking to be micromanaged. I could keep going, but I'm going to pause there. Liana, did I touch on anything that hit close to home for you?
I was actually just going to add from a rep perspective, I think, and I've learned this the hard way, but I think it's super important to just be vocal with your manager, just about how you operate, how you work, what your goals are, and really what works best for you, just because, again, work is a place that you spend a majority of your time. You spend a lot of energy there, a lot of time, dedication, and you don't want to be scared to go to work or to talk to your manager. So just being open and honest about how you do your best work, I think is key.
That is such a good point. Like fantastic point, because that, again, like a lot of this stuff ties together, and that's why I put these things into buckets. But if you're afraid to communicate with your manager, that's a big problem, right? And then for me as a manager, I have to understand, right? I'm fortunate enough. So open up a little bit more about myself real quick, as long as we have time. I grew up with learning disabilities. I was in special ed starting in 4th grade all the way through 12th grade, right? And I have a daughter with Down syndrome who's the coolest person I've ever met in my life and has opened my mind and my perspective to tons of things in life that I had, not intentionally, but blockers up. And what I've learned through those things is everyone learns differently. And when you think about micromanagement, and yes, we have to have standardization on a team all day, every day, but everybody learns differently. Everyone needs to be managed to an extent uniquely to who they are so that you can uplift them, that you can empower them, that they can share those vulnerabilities with you so that you can improve. And without knowing those things, I don't know how you can get the most out of your people. So empowerment is really important, and just know you hired them for a reason. I've said that twice now, but I think it's a really important thing to drive home. And it's hard when people are 3,000 miles away on the other side of the country. You haven't talked to them, you haven't seen them, you feel a little anxious yourself. I've been there, but your people are working, right? And trust them.
We got another question. This one might be a little tricky. We'll see. This is from Anonymous. If at all, when is micromanagement most important and effective? So it's kind of the inverse. Is there a time when it actually can work or it needs to happen?
I love that question. I'm going to take a shot at it. I don't know if it's going to work. All right. I think maybe it's not micromanagement, but like when you're getting to the point where, let's say I have a new seller. Let's make up a fictitious thing here right now, right? Liana's new on my team. Pretty soon, we're letting her loose into the wild. It's already really happening, right? She winds up getting into a large 6-figure deal, right? That's what we're all chasing. And there's 6 different, I'd be involved with that anyways and working with her regardless of tenure. But at the end of the day, there's just a lot that she might need on the execution side, from a process side, from internal people, like all of these different things where at that point, I may have to take over just a little bit, right? I may have to micromanage the opportunity or some of the conversations or some of the strategy and planning, because she just might not be there yet, and that's okay, right? But while doing that and kind of maybe micromanaging in the moment, I think what we want to do is making sure that I'm just not running the cycle. I'm actually teaching her how we want to be doing it, so that the next time she's off and running on her own, or maybe 80% closer, whatever that may be. So I hope to Mr. or Mrs. Anonymous that answered your question, but it was a good one. I can think more about it.
It sounded good to me. Before we move on to the next one,
She's heading out. It sounded good.
Yeah, we're done. Walk away.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say Luke dropped in a message that said, Mike, fantastic points. So no question there, but I just wanted to thank him for that comment. All right, let me pull up the next stat that we're going to talk about. So for point number 3 out of 5, reps that get less than 30 minutes of weekly coaching see a win rate of 43%. But reps that get 2 or more hours of coaching every week see a win rate of 56%. So kind of a large increase there.
Yeah, for sure. I think creating a coaching culture is hard, right? It is, especially if you come into an organization that doesn't have one, or you're trying to build one. I think the good news is it starts with us as sales leadership, right? Like all day, every day. I'm a RVP of sales. I'd love to be coached. I want my CRO, who I report into, to coach me to get better. Because frankly, one day I want his job, right? Not here, but at some other place, right? Like I'd love to be a CRO one day. I'm not ready, but really good coaching is going to allow me to get there, right? On the personal front. I think the important coaching starts with some of these other bullets, where it's creating an environment where coaching is not seen as this thing of like micromanagement or not trusting your folks to do these things. It's about a feedback loop. It's about, we decided at the beginning of the year, you had your professional goals. I want to help you get there. You got to let me coach you, right? And it's really, really important to do that. And I have to be the one to lead the way on that front. I am the coach. So I've got to get folks to buy into that. And how you can do that, in my position, I'm lucky. I'm starting basically with the team from scratch. I had 1 rep when I started here 60 days ago. So for me, in the hiring process, it becomes important. There's the concept of the lone wolf seller who goes out and hits 200% a plan, and you just see them at sales kickoff and then see them at the next sales kickoff sort of thing. I tend to avoid hiring those types of folks. Some people have different opinion. That's just mine. I don't like the non-collaborators or the I will call you when I need you sort of reps. Otherwise, kind of leave me alone, right? Like, okay, that just means you don't want to get better to me. And all of us can get better, right? So the best reps, in my opinion, in the world, and I've been very fortunate enough not to only manage some of them, but be around some of them. They love coaching. They want a coaching culture. Top performers seek out ways to get better constantly. They're naturally curious. They want to make more money. They want to further their careers. And if you're embracing a rep that, doesn't seem to embrace those concepts, for me, it's as simple as just don't hire them. Because that's what I'd like to build. That's where I find our teams to be most successful. And to me, that's what the best reps want. Now, I promised I wasn't going to make this, the whole purpose of today is to talk about these things, right? But when it comes to coaching, why I'm at Chorus, frankly, is we embrace that, not only from a technology perspective, but as an organization, right? Like, so invest in technology, invest in a process, and invest in the people that want to create and reinforce a coaching culture. And you're going to see results. You are going to drive more revenue, period. So with coaching, for me, comes accountability. Again, it starts with me, but every week block off time on your calendar to address coaching, right? Because it's hard, right? It's hard to sometimes find the time. I'm lucky I work at Chorus. I can watch film all day, every day, right? I can listen to calls when I'm going to bed at night to when I'm coming into work in the morning and everything in between. you could do the stuff, through your one-on-ones, obviously the conversational intelligence tools like we have, but driving home coaching opportunities on things like team meetings is really important, right? And what I've found that's so cool about this, that gets me so excited, is when you create that environment, like, we're not going to win if I'm the only coach or the only one critiquing or the only one trying to make each other better. When you create an environment and a culture and a team that's wants to work together, wants to see each other successful, that wants to, pick each other up when they're down, you're going to get the results you need. And what I'm seeing, even early on, is just, whether it's Liana and Andre, one of my other new reps, just leaving comments on calls that they're reviewing and watching. Wait, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And then it just becomes this organic thing. So if your company doesn't, embrace it, and you don't control the whole company, but you control your sales team, you don't have to wait for everybody else to create a culture. Create one with your team and let it take off. Become your own little elite squad, and let the rest of the company catch up to you. That's my opinion. I couldn't be more bullish on the importance of not only coaching, but having the right tools and the right personnel that embraces that concept. And I read another stat that I believe was like 28% higher win rates for companies that embrace a coaching culture. I don't know how to get better without how my people can get better without coaching, how I can get better without coaching. Because sometimes you're like, all right, I'm doing pretty well. I hit 100% of plan this year. But if you're doing some real coaching, maybe that 100% of plan person's 150, 200%, right? Because it's just little tweaks and little things that can help. And you can shorten sales cycles. You can improve ramp times. Like, there's so much value into coaching. You just got to make sure you make a commitment to it. So for me, it's blocking off time in my calendar. To me, it's, going in and doing the work because it's going to pay dividends. Yeah, I think that's all I got right now on that. I'd love to hear from Liana or from any other questions from some folks out there.
No, just one quick one here. I would say too, what's helped me in my career is coming to your manager and yourselves, like just individual meetings or one-on-one meetings, and kind of having a top list that you've identified on areas that you want to work on. I think that helps sort of promote that collaboration and that coaching culture, where it's like, hey, I need your help. Like, where can you help with this? What can I be doing better? As you said, we always want to be getting better as reps. We want to be making that money. We want to bounce ideas off of each other. So coming to the table with some of the different areas and items that you want to work on as well is huge.
Yeah, for sure. It'll lead into our fifth bullet, but like pushing me in the right direction. Understand
exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Let me pull up the next. This isn't a stat. It's kind of more of just an important point to emphasize for number 4, embracing automation. Sellers are being asked to do more now than ever before, create efficiencies whenever possible.
Yeah, man. I think one of the reasons I love being a sales manager, I love sellers. I think it takes a lot of courage to sell. All right, whether you're a BDR or an AE, you're going whatever segment you're going into, you're calling on people that have never heard of you before, not only as a person, but maybe as a company, depending where you are in your stage of growth. You're getting rejected a ton, right? So like for me, putting sellers in a position to be successful, some of those other things we talked about, but right now, I can even tell you my short sales career, right? Within 7 years, I've seen incredible changes. I've had to adapt. I've had to change, right? And sellers are being asked to do more than ever, right? To be doing things. So like full sales cycle from prospecting to execution to content creation, right? You think about these things. You get your account list. You got to do account planning and prioritization. You got to start prospecting. You got to start your own outreach. You got to do call prep, content creation, pipeline management, pipeline reviews, CRM hygiene. You might inherit ops mid-cycle from somebody else and trying to figure out what's going on. There's always training, not just sales training, but everyone has, security and privacy training now with some of the tools that are out there. You've got to have coaching and respond to that. You might have QBRs, right? Internal, or if you're maybe on the account management side, external QBRs that you're spending a ton of time focusing on those things and creating them, and it's manual and it can be exhausting, right? So for me, as a sales leader, where can I find places to automate manual things that ultimately are doing the exact thing I don't want to be happening, and that is slowing my sellers down. I want to do everything I can to let sellers sell, right? And because you have all these things to do, it could be overwhelming, right? So for me as a sales leader, it's about getting the tools in place. Before I go into some of these more tactical things and maybe some recommendations, part of the reason Liana's here is to keep me honest too, and call me on any BS here. But I'd love to hear from you. Is that relevant, right? Like, do you feel like, oh my God, there's a ton of stuff to do as a seller these days?
Oh yeah, even just 3 weeks in, starting out here. Again, I'm coming from a world of account management, so some of the different tools we were leveraging as well were just a bit different. But tons of different systems that you have to be worried about. Obviously, putting everything into Salesforce on a daily basis, working out of Outreach, and then just having other systems on top of that. I think obviously, Mike, we chatted about this, but this is where Chorus comes into play. Obviously, don't want to make the topic of discussion, but I think that's just huge in some of the different systems they're linked to and the ecosystem there.
For sure. And Chorus rules, I'm just going to say it. I'm sorry. It's a fantastic tool. It brings so much value to us as a sales team, especially ramping right now. Don't know what to do without it. So it's okay to bring it up once or twice, right? I'll dig into a couple things here. Just like in my experience, types of tools and automation, depending on where you are in sales org, some of this might be a refresher or like, hey, I already know that, to a sales leader that's just starting, a VP of sales with 2 salespeople and looking to scale because you just got Series A and whatever that may be. This might be more applicable to you. But let's start like kind of at where sellers have to start, right? So first of all, I don't care if you're the world's greatest global sales rep or you're a brand new BDR. You need to know how to prospect, period. The best sellers in the world prospect. You might have a good demand gen team. You might have a good BDR team that's feeding you leads, but like, why not keep adding gas onto that fire and creating more opportunity for yourself? Folks that don't do that, it just doesn't make a ton of sense to me personally. So when you think about prospecting, invest in the sales engagement tool, right? Like I'm not here to advertise for other vendors or anything like that, but there's a lot of great tools out there that allow you to automate some of your prospecting, right? So it allows them to work smarter, allows them to work faster, and do more touches in less time, right? So set your folks up for success, especially early on when you have a large total addressable market and you're a sales rep at a small company covering a ton of accounts. You might prioritize them. You have your top 15 that you're putting a ton of focus in, and maybe that's all your own outreach, but how are you going to get those other 20, 30, 40, sometimes hundreds of accounts that people have to go touch? You got to be able to find places to automate that, or you're not getting your message, your word, your technology out there. The other piece is once you have, maybe even before this, so I kind of screwed up these 2 bullets, I suppose, but account prioritization, right? Like every seller knows, it doesn't matter how good you are, if you don't have a good list, first of all, right? Whether it's a territory or account-based list, whatever that may be, you're already facing an uphill battle. But how do I prioritize this in a manner that makes sense and do it in a way that is automated? So there's great tools out there that allow you to do things like that. We recently invested in Zoom Info, and it allows you to help to automate a lot of that account prioritization, allows you to put parameters in place, whether it's like, hey, we have similar investors, or we have they have a tech stack that aligns with our ICP, or they've invested in they're a high growth company with 100 sellers. That's something I want to know. But having to do that with dozens, if not hundreds of accounts, I've done it before. It can take weeks, right? And that's time as a seller that you could be learning more. You could be educating yourself. You could be reading really good content. There's a million different other things you could be doing besides, data entry is essentially what it comes down to, right? Other stuff, right? Near and dear to my heart. I've worked in and sold to and learned from so many sales enablement leaders in my day. And I was fortunate enough under wonderful leadership at my last company, Seismic, to just learn so much and spend so much time with wonderful people. I know a few of you are here and I appreciate y'all, but if your reps are spending time on things like creating content, you got to find ways to automate that process, right? And I'm not pitching Seismic here. I was just fortunate enough to be able to use that and saw the power of it, right? So reps spend so many hours and sometimes days on things like QBRs, like I mentioned before with your clients, or internally getting ready, right? If you can automate those things, it's really powerful, right? So even simple things, right? Searching for content that you can't find, especially as a new person in a remote environment that probably exists on someone's laptop in another part of the country, or a technical document you want to get over to the customer. Not being able to find those things is not only a waste of time, but man, it also creates a negative impact for your buyer, right? We're all trying to create better buyer experiences. You can't be doing that with not being able to find the things you need and responding in a timely manner, right? And then when and where possible, I would say partially or fully automate all these things. If they're manually doing this, they're not doing what we need them to do, right? Just keep driving that home. They're not selling if they're doing these things. And that should make all of us as sales leaders a bit nervous. We all have revenue goals. We all value our time. And the last piece, spoiler alert, I'm coming in with Chorus one last time because I just believe in it. That's why I'm here. There's no tools like conversational intelligence, right? That are going to allow you to do some of the things you need to do. So it allows me to create, document, and measure my coaching culture that I'm trying to build here. Like, I can't tell you how important that is. The ability to go out and hear the voice of the customer, get product feedback, sales process feedback. Are your reps selling new or acquired products and trying to improve messaging, overall customer experience? All of these things matter. And a lot of times what is happening is sellers are sitting on the call. They're taking their notes down. They then have to upload them into Salesforce. We don't know what anybody said on the other end of that, right? So we're just taking those notes that those sellers put in as gospel. And the challenge becomes for all of us as sales leaders, as we're scaling and growing, account management may change, right? Sellers take on new account lists. Having all of that data and that voice of that customer from like not only customer experience, but ability for a rep to get up to speed in a way, right? We're talking automation, get to a place where they're really comfortable where we're at with that account, opportunity, customer, whatever it may be. It's crazy. And then we all struggle with the CRM data anyways, right? Everybody does. So improving that quality of CRM data to then ultimately look at things like real visibility into your pipeline for the first time, not just word of mouth from your sellers, but word of mouth from your prospects. It's just a game changer. So I'm passionate about that. I was told probably not to go too hard on Chorus in this, but like, that's why I'm here. And if you're not looking at technology like this, frankly, you're going to be left behind and your competitors are using it, you're at a disadvantage. And really with all these tools, right? When it comes to automating, if your sellers are moving slow and your competition's moving fast, I don't think I really need to say much more about that, right? I think it's incredibly important. But my last caveat, and then I'd love to hear from you, Liana, is don't overdo it. Don't throw too many tools at your sellers because then it becomes noise. So really identifying the ones that your team, your organization needs and sticking to that and putting a program around it is the important piece, because we got to just buy tons of tech and then hope it works, right? Buy the tools your sellers need that they're going to use, and then also put a program around it and set the expectation that they will use it. That's it. You got anything, Liana, there? I don't know how we're doing on time.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we still need to get to the final point, and we have a couple of really good questions that came in. So I don't want to cut you off, Liana, but I just kind of giving everyone a heads up.
No, go for it.
Okay, cool. I'll transition to the final point, which is managing up. And this is like one more kind of just point of emphasis, right? Teamwork is a two-way street, and surprise, communication is key.
All day. Man, I told you this before, Danny, but your voice is just so soothing for me. I appreciate you, man. It's awesome.
That makes me happy. Good.
Yeah, man, you kill it. Liana, I'd love to hear, let's start with you, right? I just did a lot of talking.
Yep.
When you think about managing up, and we've only been working together a couple of weeks, right? But I think the importance of managing me, right? Like managing up when it comes to me, or maybe even your past experiences might be a good place to start.
For sure.
Without calling anyone out.
Yeah, so I actually think managing up to me is sort of twofold. So when I think of managing up, I know I mentioned this before, but I think being vocal is so important. And like you mentioned, communication is key. So open and honest conversations around, how you do your best work, what really motivates you, what your goals are, where, you see yourself maybe in 12 months, 2 years, 5 years, having conversations with your manager that will really allow him to understand, again, what motivates you at the end of the day, but also understand that it's a two-way street. So identify, what areas are important to your manager, to his manager or her manager. What are their goals, and what could you be doing on a daily basis to really make his or her life easier? And you guys are really setting the right expectations.
I love that. Maybe we should just end there because you said it way better than I probably would have. Well done, Liana. Yeah, there's a lot to bite off there, but that's like very well said. I would say, just looking at the clock here, there's one other piece to this too that I think is important. You think about a lot of companies give you real life examples or hypotheticals that people can relate to, I suppose, is that you think about a couple of founders that start a company and they're really successful and they start growing, they start scaling. I think inherently, I think even for myself, I would be in that place where I would feel like you're losing control a little bit, right? Like the team's growing and scaling. You used to be in on every deal. You knew every decision that was being made, and it can be a challenge, right? And so for me, I think a big important piece is also not creating an environment where you folks feel like you can manage up when it comes to me, but also being a person that can go up for you, right? Where it's like, oftentimes, like let's call it a CRO or a VP of sales or a founder. It's great having them involved in deals, without question. It's great to have them and they like you learn from. I'm not trying to say anything negative here, but what happens is that when you start losing that control, I don't want them to consistently be hitting you up on a deal that we just talked about 5 minutes ago. That does nothing for you except slow you down, stress you out. You don't need that, and especially if there's 3 days left in the quarter. If you have questions, you have concerns, I want to create an environment that like it's fluid and you can have conversations, but I don't want it to be a next level of stress for my team. You come back to mental health and it's like, you got 3 or 4 people hitting you up about the same deal nonstop. You got to get this in, you got to do this, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no. Like if this doesn't come in, I told you I'm forecasting it for this quarter. Liana and I have been working really hard on this together. If it doesn't come in, you can blame me, right? Liana's working hard. She's doing what she's supposed to do, but that's my job, is to come to you and let you know what our team's coming with as a number. And if we miss, I missed. It's not just the reps out there. So I think managing up those expectations, I wouldn't even say as you scale and grow a team, it's also protecting them from a lot of the noise or the politics, maybe some of the behind the scenes stuff that they don't know about, because I just want you zeroed in. Do your job, get better at it every single day, and allow me to take on some of the other stress. That's what I'm getting paid for, and that's what I'm here for. So I think that's really important. I think sometimes folks miss that. And when you're in a startup, it's going from like infancy to teenage stage. It can get awkward and you'll have some issues around it. But at the end of the day, I think that's where we all need to go, because our C-suite and everybody else at any organization also has other things to do. And they don't need to necessarily get to that level all the time. So it's creating trust, that they can have trust in me to do my job. So you can go do yours.
That's killer. Just let's run through a couple of these questions. I think we want to try to keep this whole thing to under an hour. So I just wanted to shout out to Sam. He dropped a message in, he or her, I should say, that they're just really enjoying the presentation. Yes.
I appreciate you, brother. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. A few questions here. Holly, what way is coaching most beneficial? Just conversations, call recording, sitting on calls? Are there other ways that you found to be helpful in coaching situations? Yeah.
I mean, call recording is a great place to start, right? Because it can be like, here's the moment, right? Like, here's the moment in the game film. For me, like we were just talking about this, right? It's really important when you think about call recording and really conversational intelligence, the world that I live in. I was coaching before without the game film. So what I was coaching to is maybe some things Liana, right, would have been telling me in maybe at a future place. A past place where I did not have the film. So I was coaching a game that I couldn't see unless I was on the call, right? So when you think about the power of that, it's real time in the sense of, okay, maybe you just had a call, so maybe not quite real time, but this is what we should do. This is maybe what you can improve upon, right? Like you asked really good questions, but you asked 7 of them in a row and you left the prospect a little confused. Ask one, make it open-ended, right? Like simple little things like that can make a huge difference in a person's sales career, especially as they're thinking about, here's my demo, here's my content that I'm trying to show. I'm trying to ask engaging questions. I'm thinking about next steps, right? Having that ability to do that is big, right? Other coaching opportunities, I think, I mean, that's a big one for me, but I think other opportunities are more conversational. And I think it starts at the macro level of identifying, I just had this conversation with Liana, like, what are your goals, life goals, professional goals? Where do you want to go? Right? When you know that, it makes the coaching piece easier because it's like, we're doing this with a purpose to get you to where you want to be. This is what you told me you want to do, not what I'm trying to get you to, right? So understanding your people, where they want to go, and then coaching around that as well. Not just like call recording, but in your one-on-ones or whatever that may be. So I hope that helped somebody there with that question.
Yeah, sounded great to me. This next one, maybe take a deep breath. This one's going to be a little bit challenging. This is a good one. Anonymous. Okay, they ask, I have a sales rep on my team who has opened up to me about his mental illness struggles. He is having a very hard time attitude-wise, but is crushing his numbers. He has started being more openly negative during team meetings, and I fear I have created a space for him where he might feel too comfortable expressing himself. How do I create a safe place to discuss those things with me and also draw some boundaries around his behavior in front of the team? I see so much potential in him, but he is just miserable. What are some good next steps?
Wow. So that's a lot, right? And I want to, like, full disclaimer, I'm not a mental health expert. I am on the beginning of what I think is a lifelong journey to continue to improve my own mental health, right? And I would say first, be patient. I don't know what him or I think it was a him mental health issues are. So it's tough for me to say exactly what to do, right? But you also don't want it to have a negative impact on your team. So it's a really delicate line to watch, and it is your health, which is private to some folks, right? Or really to all of us to an extent. So I guess my suggestion would to be, without crossing lines, it's hard, but if they've opened up to you about their mental health issues, I would just kindly and empathetically ask them what they're doing to address those things, right? And there's medication and things like that you probably don't want to go down the path of, but therapy is huge, right? For me, AA has been very big. If I skip a couple AA meetings or don't do certain things, like, I don't feel right, right? And I might act a little bit differently. So ask them if they're getting the resources that they need, other than just talking to their manager about the challenges, and be flattered that they feel close enough to talk to you about those things. But also at the same time, right? Just because you have mental health issues doesn't give you the kind of a pass to be a jerk to your teammates or act out or act certain ways, right? So if they need a day, they need a break, they need a week, right? If they're dominating and they're doing really well, some of it might be work related. So ask them to take some PTO, ask them to breathe a little bit. For my team, I meditate every single day. I encourage my team to do the same. I know Liana just tried it out recently and she was actually enjoying it, right? Like doing things like that, I think can help. But do I have the perfect answer? I'm sorry, I don't. But be empathetic, care about them, but also let them know that, like, that sort of behavior in group calls is it just can't be acceptable, right? And like, if they're not feeling right in that moment, that's okay. Take a break from that call. Don't come in and cause a ruckus, because we still got a business to run.
I think
Is
that's
that okay
great.
on the fly?
Yeah, I think you did a good job. Two more questions, so we might have to do kind of lightning out answers here. Luke asks, perception is that engineers are challenged with being great managers. What is your opinion?
I think we have just way too, in this country or this world alone, just have way too many generalizations about folks, right? Like, I seem like an extroverted person in here, but I'm actually in my private life very introverted. I don't know if I'm a great manager or not either, right? I aspire to be. But I think, to be fair, maybe Liana's got something, I don't know. But yeah, from an engineering perspective, I think I don't like generalizations. So if people are saying that I just taking a group of people and saying engineers aren't good at management, I think is just wrong. That would be because I just don't like doing that in general. But if you feel like you're an engineer, if you are an engineer and you're struggling with management, it all starts with self. Like, look in the mirror, think about things that you can do to empower your people, right? And I think letting them know you care. I think that's the number one thing people need to know is, especially these days, is that their manager cares about them as a human being, and very special things happen after that.
I love it. Last question. Rachel asks, some great insights. Thanks all. What's the best way to foster and encourage communication between team members who are fully remote and find it challenging to communicate on a consistent and high quality basis?
Yeah. I mean, there's obviously tools, right? Like whether it's Slack and collaboration tools like that, if you haven't made those investments, there's different levels as far as price and things like that. The person who asked this knows this. Sorry, I'm just throwing it out there in case that's something to miss. But I would say, hosting team calls to talk about other things besides just deals and pipelines and creating that environment. But like what I'm doing right now, because it's very real to me, is I'm creating a team. We're all a little bit awkward. We all don't know everything yet. We're all trying hard, right? So creating that world where it's like, hey, we're only as strong as the person to the left or right. Like when I was in the department from the military, but it's this concept of I got your six, right? Like I got your back. We as teammates, creating this wonderful diverse team that we have, I want us to all know that we have each other's backs, that we all care about each other, that we all need to invest to each other, and that we've built this team in a way that we all complement each other. And if they're not leveraging each other and being proactive in their own careers, they're missing it. They're missing. So one, create an environment where everyone has mutual respect, appreciates each other, have diversity of thought on the team where hopefully naturally attracts each other, people to each other. Because like, ooh, this person knows a little bit about this, and that's a weak spot for me. When you do that, it's great. Like yesterday, my team held a meeting. I didn't even know it, talking about some cadences that we're trying to redo on our team. They just went ahead and did that, and fantastic. One less thing I had to stress out about, right? So I think it's really important to create a team that has that mindset, foster that environment, and then push people to go ahead and do that. Because I don't want to be the one always hosting the calls, or like you got to create an environment where these things happen organically. Technology kind of aside. And then for businesses, as we get out of the pandemic, just as being in Boston, being with Liana, being with people that the energy I feed off of, if you've got these opportunities now, get out, do some things with each other. If it's cross country, maybe your business can invest in getting you on to one place for a couple of days for a training session or whatever it may be. But I just feel blessed that we're back into this world of seeing each other. Liana's in the booth next to me, and it's exciting.
Yeah. And one thing I'd probably add, just from like rep perspective, I've obviously had to onboard the past 3 weeks remotely, but I think just kind of being proactive, like you mentioned, reaching out, getting comfortable being uncomfortable, but reaching out to maybe folks in different departments, getting a virtual coffee going, and just kind of bouncing off ideas with them and starting to get to know who at the organization you work with.
And last piece, if you're new, don't wait, because it's like anything.
Yeah.
The longer you wait, you build up that anxiety. It's like, oh, I've been here 2 months. Maybe I should already know that. I shouldn't reach out. Just do it and create an environment where people want to help each other that way.